Hello, Altadena. Good to be with you again, doing the devotional. Hope you guys are making it all right and really enjoying getting back to public worship. Hope more of you will be able to join us soon. I wanted to talk today a little bit about things going on in light of the death of George Floyd, and just talk, just a very short time about race in the American church. And I thought about speaking about some of my own experience. When I was in elementary school, we lived in St. Louis, and I went to a small private school. We had about 25 kids in our class, and it was multicultural, multiracial. I remember a girl in our class named Monisha from Pakistan, another from Mexico, and some African American students. And that was, of course, normal to me, having different colors, different nationalities, different perspectives. And then when I was in sixth grade, middle of my sixth grade year, we moved to Statesboro, Georgia, a small town, South Georgia, 50 miles west of Savannah. And there were African Americans in my school, but the races were very stratified, very separated. Seemed like there wasn't much friendship, much social interaction across that racial barrier. And so that was different for me. I didn't really notice it that much. I noticed it, but I didn't really understand it that much. But most of my friends looked like me. And I remember an issue happened. I think I was in high school when the movie Amistad came out. And the movie theater decided not to show the movie in Statesboro because they were concerned about racial strife that the movie would cause. It's about a slave ship that came to America, and the slaves on the ship made it to the United States Supreme Court over an issue of where they were from, and the Supreme Court dealt with that. And so it was something of a risk for the community that would be a racial matter to blow up. Anyway, I just was thinking about some of that, and in light of the protests going on, that people are recognizing that these racial issues have lasted a long time, been around a long time, simmering below the surface. That yes, many advances were made during the civil rights movement in the 1960s, but we still have a lot of difficulty, a lot of issues. And then passages like Psalm 34, the Lord is near to the brokenhearted, have affected me and affected many in the church. It seems like God is waking the church up to listen more. And there's risk involved in that. I think part of the defensiveness, part of the self-protection of the church has been that there is risk involved in listening, because if I really discover, if I really learn about the amount of oppression that my black brothers and sisters have had to endure, then that there's risk that I might feel something, and that I might be called to do something more than just kind of go along with my status quo, the way I've always lived, and assuming that somebody else will do something about it. But I really think that God is waking the church up through this, helping people realize the reality of life in America as a black person, especially a black man, the truth about the history of the church's complicity in racism, which is difficult to acknowledge, difficult to read about, hear about, especially in the South. So much of our history has been whitewashed or overlooked. Thankful for Christian men like Brian Stevenson, the Just Mercy book, and the Equal Justice Initiative, and the museum that he has built in Montgomery about lynching and the truth about lynching. And so, what are some fruits that God is bearing and that you might consider Him bearing in your own life? Willingness to listen, less defensive and more humble, less self-protective and more tolerant of others' pain, especially others' pain that you may not have had anything to do with, but is just different for you because you're not a black person. And maybe less contentment with the status quo of the just continued barriers and separation, especially in the church, between the black church and the white church. And some more willingness to enter in, to listen, to engage. And so what do? I think certainly one of the things we do is pray for sincerity in prolonged engagement and change. The test will be the many months from now, after the shock of what happened to George Floyd has died down. That will be the test. And then asking God to give you a listening willingness to explore, to discover, to read, to learn, that God would grow real gospel unity in the American church, that the racial barriers would be broken down so that the church can lead the way in society. And please pray for the Mercy team. We've already had some discussions about these things and talk about them even before this. But how do we respond at Altadena? What can we do as a church that's not just trendy, but can be some prolonged efforts in partnering with Urban Hope and partnering with Household of Faith in helping people build relationships with people of color all around us. In Jesus' name we ask.